So hello all and welcome to the Pesticide Discussion Forum, which is hosted by the Division of Environmental Health at the University of Cape Town with funding from Sweden through the Swedish chemical agency Chemi. You are all most welcome, and please continue to introduce yourselves in the chat room with your name, country and organization. I am Andrea Rother. I'm professor and head of the Environmental Health Division here at the University of Cape Town in South Africa. So today's discussion, we are very honored to have quite a full panel where we'll be discussing pesticide exposure in countries of Eastern Europe, the Caucasus and Central Asia. And just before we begin, just to briefly remind you that this is not a webinar, but it's a chat discussion. So we ask that you keep your videos and your mics off unless you are presenting. It's a non-partisan group, so we respect everyone's point of view, even though we may not agree with each other. And really what we're trying to do with this discussion forum is to bring representatives together from different regions. And we're very privileged to be discussing a different region today and different sectors and stakeholder groups to foster a mutually supporting consortium of stakeholders to discuss various issues related to pesticides. And today we'll be looking at pesticide exposures. And we really hope to achieve this by learning from each other and sharing information, sharing case studies, identifying gaps and problem solving together so that we can collectively reduce and prevent pesticide poisonings and environmental contamination with a view to a toxic-free future for us and for the next generation. So I will shortly introduce all the speakers that we have today. We then will have 3 questions. We'll spend some time in the chat discussing these. And if you're just joining us, please do continue to introduce yourselves in the chat room. As I said, we will keep our microphones and our videos off unless we're presenting. And you'll see some poll questions will be posted. We use Mentimeter. So it gives me great pleasure to introduce our speakers today, our presenters today. And I'm going to apologize ahead of time that I may not say your names correctly. I'm a little bit more comfortable with African names, so my apologies. Our first speaker today will be Dr. Olga Speranskaya, who we've had the honor before of having speak to us. She is the co-director of Health and Environment Justice Support, HEA Support, which is an international organization aimed to achieve a healthy environment and environmental justice for everyone. Our second speaker will be Susan Huffmans, who is an agricultural engineer and works as a senior advisor at the Pesticide Action Network in Germany. You're most welcome, Susan. Our third presenter will be Goha Koyayan, who is a communication specialist at the Armenian Women for Health and Healthy Environment, which is an NGO based in Armenia. Goha, you're most welcome. Our fourth speaker will be Denis Pavlovsky, who is head of the Chemical Safety Agency, which is an NGO based in Ukraine. Denis, you're most welcome. Our fifth presenter will be Dr. Olga Tsagolova, who is a deputy director of the Chemical Safety Agency, also in Ukraine. You're most welcome, Olga. And our sixth speaker will be Dr. Oleg Penunuk, who is chairman of the Public Association of Independent Ecological Expertise, which is located in the Kyrgyz Republic. You are most welcome, Oleg. I will now hand over to Olga, and I thank you all for leading us through this important discussion. Olga, the mic is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Andrea, and good afternoon, everyone. And thank you, Andrea, for the introduction, and so the colleagues for the possibility to introduce the problem of pesticide exposure in countries of Eastern Europe, Caucasus and Central Asia, or the ECCA region. We will be talking about the situation in 12 countries of the former Soviet Union, as you see on this map on this slide. And next slide, please. Yes, so in these countries, there are two major sources of pesticide exposure, which include stockpiles of obsolete and banned pesticides and the extensive use of new pesticides. So it is known that the Republic of the USSR received huge amounts of pesticides to improve agriculture. And after these republics became independent, many of them completely lost control over the system, and pesticide stockpiles remained unguarded, and the chemicals themselves were not properly stored. And still, many obsolete poisonous chemicals from such stockpiles are illegally used by farmers in their fields and household plots. And national governments lack the funds, technology to address these chemical threats. And often obsolete pesticides are stored in bad conditions, spreading exposure to toxic substances over long distances. But to add to this, the consumption of new chemicals and pesticides in ECCA is increasing. And in some countries of the region, the amount of imported pesticides has almost doubled in the period between 2014 and 2020. So while only pesticides listed in national registers are authorized for use in ECCA countries, the national lists of registered pesticides inter alia include highly hazardous pesticides, which can permanently undermine human health and the environment and affect future generations, because many of them are endocrine disruptors and contribute to cancer. Next slide, please. Yeah, so prior to the fourth meeting of the Intergovernmental Conference on Chemicals Management, non-governmental organizations from ECCA countries conducted a first ever study comparing the list of authorized pesticides in their countries with the list of HHPs developed by Pesticide Action Network. And HHPs were found in the registers of approved pesticides in all countries that participated in the research. But five years later, in 2019, in 2020, and 2021, civil society organizations from ECCA countries, supported by the International Pollutants Elimination Network, or IPEN, conducted a new study of the use of HHPs in their countries by comparing the available data with the updated list of HHPs and the consolidated list of banned pesticides prepared by the Pesticide Action Network. And next slide, please. So, oops.
Apologies for that. I think Tatum has had a signal problem. So we'll be uploading the slides now. Our apologies.
No, that's okay. Slide 6, I think. Yeah, I will continue by saying that the results show a greater number of HHPs than in 2014 authorized for use in the region. More than 50 highly hazardous pesticides from the Pesticide Action Network HHP list are applied in each ECC country. And some countries like some countries from the region apply more than 70 HHPs, which are included into the Pesticide Action Network HHP list. And more than 30 HHPs allowed for use in ECC countries are banned or restricted in other countries. So pesticides are imported to ECC from around the world, and mainly from China and the EU, but also from Turkey and the United States. And the leaders in pesticide imports to Russia, for example, are such European and American companies as Monsanto and Bayer and Syngenta, Dow, DuPont, and BASF. And we are on slide 6. For example, highly hazardous pesticides, fipronil, is included in numerous pest control agents produced in the EU in such countries like Poland, France, and Slovenia. Fipronil is authorized in Russia but banned in 37 countries, including the European Union. And slide 7, please. So our data and information analysis show that the ECC, that in ECC region, HHPs are applied for a variety of crops in the field, in greenhouses, in vineyards, and flower cultivation. So some ECC countries do not produce pesticides and totally rely on imports. But unfortunately, high prices force people to buy illegally traded pesticides, including from obsolete pesticide stockpiles. To add to this, the region completely lacks epidemiological studies to assess the health and environmental impacts of HHPs, and these studies are almost completely absent in the region. So next slide, please. Now I would like to give the floor to Susan Hoffmans from Pesticide Action Network, Germany, to tell us more about the approach to the development of Pesticide Action Network lists of HHPs that countries from the ECC region used to assess the availability of HHPs at the national level. Yes, please.
Yes, thank you all. Oh, there's the video. Okay. Good afternoon, and thank you, Olga. And thanks, Andrea, and everyone involved. My name is Susan Hoffmans, and I'm giving a short introduction on the pan-HHP list and the list of consolidated bans of banned pesticides. Next slide, please. Okay. And you all know that what are HHPs? They are particularly hazardous to human health and the environment. And well, the term was introduced in 2006 by the FAO Council, and then 2 years later, FAO and WHO developed criteria to identify, to define what are HHPs. And so those 8 criteria begin with the acute toxicity. So those that are extremely hazardous or highly hazardous according to WHO, and those with a chronic hazard, so pesticides that are carcinogenous, with a carcinogenicity, mutagenicity, or reproductive toxicity, meet the criteria, so are HHPs, and according to the global harmonized system. And then all pesticides that are listed under Stockholm Convention, Rotterdam Convention, and the Montreal Protocol, and there's this criteria number 8. So all pesticides with showing a high incidence of severe or irreversible adverse effect on human health and the environment. So we had, everybody had this criteria, but next slide, please. The question remained, and PAN was there and said, okay, how can we identify them? And is this all we need to identify those most hazardous pesticides? And as some of you might know, the pan-HHP list is based on these joint criteria by FAO and WHO, but it's also, we are after a process of discussing with experts, and over the years, other criteria, always official criteria are added. For example, we also have those pesticides under criteria number 1 that are fatal if inhaled, but this is a very important way of exposure. And for the carcinogenicity, for example, we do not only rely on GHS, but also on those that are carcinogenic or according to US EPA or the International Agency for Research on Cancer of the WHO. And we added endocrine disruptors, as this is a very important and for some still a new, though it's discussed for 30 years, criterion. So there's also, as we felt, a lack of environmental criteria, and for building, for showing this, we included those active substances that are highly, that are of high environmental concern and highly toxic for bees. Next slide, please. So while the FAO shows the criteria, the PAN is the only one that really translate those criteria plus the additional one into a substance list. And those substance list is now available to everybody as it is free online, and stakeholders, regulators, NGOs can use this list to identify HHPs in their country and in their daily work. Next slide, please. So the second list I want to present is the international, pan-international consolidated list of banned pesticides. We heard already, and this there are two parts. It's one, it's the explanatory notes. You have the summary of information, and it's good to read through and then you know also on which data the spreadsheet is based on. But this is the second part. Please, next slide. And here you see just cut out of this list of banned pesticides, and you see that pesticides are listed, and then you have all the countries, and you have information color coded. And as we are focusing today, for example, you could find here that in Armenia 22 pesticides are identified as banned, and in Kyrgyzstan there are 24 pesticides identified as banned. Next slide, please. Just to let you know the resource for this list of banned pesticides, the list is using official lists from regulatory publications or information from the Rotterdam Convention Import Response Database, excuse me, and other reports. It does not include obsolete pesticides or those that are severely restricted. It's the same for the HHP list. And currently, the list of banned pesticides lists 460 pesticides that are banned in one or more countries, and it includes information from 162 countries. Just this list is not complete, so it's an ongoing updating process, and people are very much invited to contribute and send any information they have to info@panap.net. And just to conclude, the countries with the most known bans are EU and UK, followed by Switzerland, Brazil, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Indonesia, Cambodia, India, Mauritania, and Palestine and China. Next slide, please. And here you find the links to the list, which I can also post in the chat. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Susan. And we don't have much time, unfortunately, but we would like to briefly present you two case studies from Armenia and Ukraine, where NGOs utilized the list that Susan has just presented to assess the HHPs applied in their countries. So I would like to invite Gohar Kajayan from Armenian Women for Health and Health Environment for her short introduction. Thank you.
Thank you, Olga. Greetings to everyone. So I will speak about the case study overview of situation on HHPs in Armenia and alternatives to them. Next slide, please. Our findings show that of the 95 active ingredients belonging to the just now presented pan-HHP list, they are registered for use in Armenia, and about 50% out of these that are registered for use in Armenia are actually prohibited or are not approved for use in other countries, which means our market is vulnerable to this. The next one, please. Of the HHPs that we identified, such as insecticides, herbicides, etc., these can be applied to about 33 crops in Armenia, and they are mainly imported from China. The study analyzed 58 active ingredients of 391 HHP containing preparations that were used in the agriculture sector in my country last year. Comparison to the HHP list showed that about 3% belong to the first group with acute toxicity, 30% to the second group with long-term effects, 35 almost % belong to the third group, toxic to the environment, and which is very also concerning is the 31% that are included with combinations of groups. Next slide, please. Analysis of HHPs, we being as a health organization, we are very much worried about the health effects. And we could see that the 25 of them belong to carcinogens or possible carcinogens, which requires investigation in my country for a possible connection with the increase of morbidity and high mortality rate from cancer, in particular pancreatic, breast cancer, and the vast majority of cases of pesticide monitoring, unfortunately, are not reported to the medical services, although we do have a form for reporting, because the victims prefer to self-medicate at home, and even with severe poisoning, which means that a lot of awareness raising needs to be done as well. 60% of poisoning cases occur, of course, in the agricultural regions of the Ararat Valley, in the provinces of Ararat and Armavir, where we have the highly concentrated agricultural lands. Thank you. And I can invite our colleagues from Ukraine. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for the invitation and chance to take part in this interesting event. Now I would like to present about results of case study overview of the situation on highly hazardous pesticides and alternatives in Ukraine. Next slide, please. Yeah, this slide demonstrates situation in Ukraine and situation with highly hazardous pesticides in Ukraine. According to the state register as of December 31st, 2019, contains roughly 4,000 preparative forms of pesticides and agrochemicals. 1,125 registered preparative forms of pesticides and agrochemicals contain from 1 to 3 active ingredients, HHPs active ingredients, 83 active ingredients in total. About a third of pesticides and agrochemicals permitted for use in Ukraine as of December 31st, 2019, it's HHPs. And of course, very important to pay attention that 41 of 83 HHPs already banned in other countries, but continue to be used in Ukraine. And also, in addition, in Ukraine, there are pesticides preparations containing HHPs, which are not in the state register. So this is this is active ingredients of HHPs not registered and not regulated on the territory of Ukraine. Next slide, please. Regarding data analysis, very important to pay attention that many pesticides, including HHPs, imported from the EU. 26% it's France, 17% Germany, 16% China, and also top other countries, it's Spain, Israel, Belgium, Belarus, and Poland. Of course, we have our own production, but it's not so much. Must use HHP pesticides by active ingredient in 2020. You can see on this slide with division on the percentage according to the different active forms. Next slide, please. About situation with about negative impact of highly hazardous pesticides on the environment and on the health in Ukraine. On the first place, which make as a big indicator in Ukraine about not proper use of pesticides, including highly hazardous pesticides, it's frequent causes of mass deaths of bees. And according to this situation, also registration a lot of periodically cases of poisoning of people and animals are recorded in Ukraine during the pesticide treatment of agricultural land by aircraft. Unknown pesticides were applied in 25 villages close residential buildings. It was 2015-2016 years, and in 2017 pesticide treatment happened in violation of existing legislation, and a significant number of residents felt dizziness, nausea, and other symptoms of poisoning. Yes, of course, control organs try to control this situation, but national legislation is not so sharp, and thus we have wild and domestic animals when they are poisoned. There was a mass death of bees. Next slide, please. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so yeah, thank you very much, Dennis. Andrea, I believe this is
Yes.
Yes.
So thank you. I mean, to all the speakers who've given us very useful information, and I really have appreciated having a different regional view, since often we focus on the African region. So we really appreciate that. So we invite now all the participants to move into the chat room to discuss the questions that the presenters are asking of you, and you may post your responses in the chat. So if you could indicate whether you've used the PAN HHP list, or if you've used the consolidated list of banned pesticides, and perhaps if you could list which pesticides are banned, which HHPs are banned in your country, and what assistance do you think is needed in order to identify HHPs? You saw from Susan, she presented the JMPM criteria, and it's complex to go through the process of identifying them. So we'll move into the chat to discuss, and there will be some poll questions as well. Thank you. If you'd like to respond to the poll question on the screen, you'll see in the chat that there's a link for menti.com. You just click on that, it'll take you to the poll question and you can respond. And we encourage all of you to do that. Thank you.
Andrea, I just wanted to ask the participants of this discussion also, if possible, to answer the questions. If they ever used the Pesticide Action Network list of banned HHPs for conducting like inventory of what HHPs are used in their countries. As you heard from the presentations that were made, this kind of initiative could be actually done by non-governmental organizations and further like shared with the governments and I mean farmers and other stakeholders involved in pesticide use, because these lists are really very helpful and assist countries in like having a clear picture for what HHPs are used at the national level. So it will be really helpful to know if people know about these kind of projects or initiatives that they implement at the national level using this Pesticide Action Network lists.
Thanks, Olga. And I meant to mention that you and those who've just presented are more than welcome to turn your mics on if you want to respond to anything that you see in the chat room or respond to the poll that's in front of us. You're more than welcome to speak to it.
Okay, so while we are waiting, I suggest that probably Gohar or Dennis share their vision on whether the inventory of highly hazardous pesticide use in Armenia and Ukraine based on PAN HHP list was helpful for them. Did it help to make the picture clear of what types of highly hazardous pesticides are used in their countries?
This is Susan from Pesticide Action Network. Just to let you know that this is really interesting for us, where our lists are being used and for what purpose. And we are putting a lot of work into updating them regularly. And often we see that publications are based on them, or we get questions from all over the world, how to use it, or specific on some of the pesticides listed. So if you have used those lists, please use the chat, because it's really important for us to see. It also maybe gives ideas of how to improve them. Thank you.
Oh, yes, thank you, Susan. From my side, I may say that the use of the lists and helped us to understand the HHP use in Russia, for example, as I already mentioned in my previous intervention, there are many HHPs that are authorized in Russia, And that was revealed actually thanks to this inventory based on the PAN HHP list. And that was really helpful because even the governmental officials didn't know that these pesticides are on the list of highly hazardous pesticides and that they are banned in multiple countries, but still authorized in Russia. And I believe that the same like knowledge was also received by all other countries participated in the similar inventory. And out of 12 ECCA countries, 9 countries already were involved in this activity and used Pesticide Action Network, HHP list, and the consolidated list of banned pesticides to conduct such inventory at the national level. So that was really helpful for the region. And also frustrating, unfortunately, because
yes, thank you. I can imagine. Yeah, helpful. And, yeah.
So there is some feedback about how the lists have been used. I don't know if either of you want to respond to the poll in front of us or any of the comments before we move on to question 2.
Yes, just right. I see some. No, it's blocked. So I see it's used by people from Senegal and I think Kenya was mentioned and
excuse me, if you can allow,
yeah.
This is Gohar from Armenia. I just had some small technical problems. As you could see from our study, we did use this list to do the study. It was very useful for that purpose, but also we are working with our government, explaining to them, trying to reach with messages what things should be banned. They are using mainly the Rotterdam Convention and other restrictions that are imposed by the chemicals conventions where they are party to, but we are trying to explain things like, for instance, glyphosate and chlorpyrifos are allowed for use. And the list is helpful very much in our communication with the government. Thank you for this great work that you are doing.
Great, thank you. I suggest we move on to question 2. Olga, if you want to take us through to the next question.
Yeah, so sure. Thank you very much, Andreas. Slide 25. Oops, sorry. Yeah, and we will be talking about the role of enforcement in minimizing the health and environmental risks of HHPs and pesticides, not only HHPs, but pesticides in general in ECCA region. So enforcement is part of the compliance process. And for governmental institutions and other stakeholders to comply, it is important to participate in the development of regulation and provide input to obtain ownership and a better understanding of the regulation. So the enforcement starts with inspection or review of submitted reports or other documents as a means to verify compliance with the regulation. And for many countries to improve enforcement, it is important to increase the necessary capacity for inspections conducted by regulatory agencies, including the capacity of analytical laboratories. So also it is important to work with the public because citizens must be able to demand the regulators, to demand that regulators ensure environmental safety and that suppliers provide information about products and services to consumers. So in ECC, the lack of enforcement of the pesticide regulations includes gaps in the granting of permits and licenses for the use and sale of pesticides, as well as in maintenance of pesticide registries. Though pesticide retailers in ECC countries usually have the necessary permits, they often do not comply with the legal requirements, such as the requirement to provide information on the health hazards of pesticides or the safe disposal of pesticides waste. And these authorized retailers also take part in the illicit trade of pesticides when non-registered or counterfeit pesticide products become available in licensed stores. And according to the national law, these retailers should lose their license for such actions, but this is not the case due to poor enforcement. And our findings indicate the need for greater cooperation between countries and between customs authorities, compliance enforcement agencies to identify and respond to poor pesticide management, including illegal trade. And next slide, please. So we believe that making the globally harmonized system of classification and labeling of chemicals, the so-called the GHS system, to make it legally binding could help in addressing these problems. Because it will help make an internationally recognized hazard classification system legally binding at national level. And it will also help reduce the need for testing and will facilitate international trade in chemicals which hazards have been properly assessed already. And the use of GHS helps contribute to addressing illegal trade and finally improve the protection of human health and the environment. But unfortunately, among ECC countries, only Kyrgyzstan requires GHS labeling and safety data sheets to be applied to pesticides. And next slide, please. So why it happened? Because in 2015, Kyrgyzstan adopted a resolution that made the GHS implementation legally binding in the country. And this resolution was initiated by a non-governmental organization, the Independent Ecological Expertise, who is present here today, and developed jointly by governmental institutions, businesses, and civil society. And the first step in the enforcement process was the inclusion of the GHS requirements in the checklist of the regulatory agencies to further strengthen the control and supervision of the production, import, transport, and sale of chemicals, including pesticides. And the goal of the inspection was to check the availability of labeling and safety data sheets following the requirements of the GHS. And in addition, inspections were held to reveal whether complete and reliable information is available for consumers on the product packaging and accompanying documents. And in addition, the implementation of the GHS requirements is very important to address illegal trade. For Kyrgyzstan, for example, now pesticide supplies and fertilizer supplies apply GHS hazard classification and labeling. And this helped Kyrgyzstan to eliminate contradictions with customs regimes with other countries, noting that Kyrgyzstan does not produce pesticides itself and relies totally on imported products. And also the awareness raising activities conducted by the Independent Ecological Expertise helped to raise public understanding of the GHS symbols better, and consumers increasingly pay attention to product labeling and require safety information from retailers. Next slide, please. And I would like to give the floor to Armenian Women for Health and Health Environment now, to Gohar Kojayan, to present a case study from Armenia regarding the enforcement of pesticide regulations in this country. Please.
Thank you very much, Olga. Our studies show that there are no opportunities in Armenia currently for adoption of laws and regulations to phase out and ban all HHPs. There is, most importantly, no national policy as such on HHP governance. and for limiting the use of HSPs, even not to speak about banning. Although there is a policy and legislation for regulation of pesticides, including a system for registration, sale, and use of pesticides throughout the life cycle, the necessary provisions for its effective coordination and enforcement are lacking. For instance, we had instances when we go to the shops and the farmers would buy the pesticide they want, just this portion that they want, small portion, taken from the big package into a self-made packaging, and the salesman just would write the name of thing, or just would say, apply for this and you will get this effect, which is unacceptable. The government does not conduct any needs assessment that would establish the extent to which a product is required for use. Therefore, there is, as we say, over-prescription, like with antibiotics. They are prescribing this pesticide for virtually everything. And whether safe alternatives are effective or more available, this information is also lacking. Although there is a policy of framework for pesticide registration system, the registration schemes are very poorly functioning, and they are affected by limited human resources and financial resources, and lack sufficient capacity to assist, like laboratory skills, training, etc. There is also a lack of knowledge about the use and the risks of pesticide, as well as knowledge about alternatives. This much from our side. I think our colleagues from Ukraine can add. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Goar, for the floor. I would like to say that regarding situation in Ukraine with highly hazardous pesticides. First of all, I would like to say that the lack of definition of highly hazardous pesticide in the legislative field of Ukraine leads to the lack of regulation of HHPs at all stages of their life cycle, as well as minimization of their negative impact on health and the environment. And here, returning to the first question about useful elements of the HHP's pan-HHP's list, I would like to say that when we started to work under this situation in Ukraine, our study based on this is upon HHP's list. Thus, we analyze and we try to find, and this span list was very useful for us to understand and to explain for our government which exactly items of this state register, which exactly chemicals substances in national pesticides register is HHPs. Thus, it was its pan-HHP list was very helpful and helped us to demonstrate and show not only for the government, but also to demonstrate all situation in Ukraine with pesticides and agrochemicals for the people, for the users, for the companies, for the business, and of course for the mass media to evaluate all of this situation. Tragical situation in Ukraine. Thus, to return to the question 2, on the second place, it's a lack of enforcement results in the widespread deaths of bees during the pesticides application in the field. Mass death of birds in February 2021 in the Ascania Nova Reserve due to grain poisoning, which was treated with Brodifacoum as rodenticide. And we have also not registered poisoning which related with rodenticides. Ukraine does not require GHS labeling and safety data sheets to be applied to imported pesticides, including HHPs. And when importing pesticides and agrochemicals for scientific purposes into Ukraine, there is no need to confirm the test conducted in the country of origin. Farmers often resist governmental attempts to phase out certain HHPs as they are afraid of losing yield. Ukraine is facing gigantic volumes of contraband and counterfeit plant protection products. And in this item, I would like to pay attention that according to the FAO evaluation, it's roughly 20–25%. But according to the results in retail trade, contraband and counterfeit plant protection products up to 80%. And the last, raising stakeholder awareness on pesticides, health, and environmental risks as availability of safer alternatives is needed to protect the population from pesticides impact. Yes, and of course, totally, situation in Ukraine is unregulated, and we have a lot of work together with government, together with Ministry of Health, Ministry of Environment, because pesticides and agrochemicals, two ministers responsible for this. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dennis and Gar, for for presenting these case studies from the countries, and thank you for the independent ecological expertise for sharing this information about GHS use in Kyrgyzstan. And Andrea, yes, I believe the questions are yours.
Thank you.
Right.
Yes, thanks. And thanks again to all of you who have presented. It's really important and useful to see the statistics from different countries. So for question 2, the presenters are asking, does data on the use of highly hazardous pesticides in your country contribute to the development and implementation of national legislation aimed at reducing HHPs? And you can talk about legislation in general if you like. And does your country require GHS labeling? In other words, has your country implemented the GHS? So we'll be in the chat for a bit, and we'll also have some poll questions. Thank you.
While we are waiting for some reflection to these questions in the chat, I just wanted to say that the inventory of HHP's authorization that we conducted in 9 ECCA countries, they were really helpful because this data was shared with the governmental officials and as I said, like before, for some of them, or for many of them, that was quite a unique information that they could present further to the heads of the departments, to those who are responsible for the development and strengthening of the regulations. So this exercise of analyzing the number of HHPs and the names of HHPs that are still authorized in the countries is very important for drafting and improving the national legislation. Yes, so Ahmad says that it is hard in Iran to bridge these two scientific papers, data and national legislation, and I agree with this. And it is especially problematic if this data comes from non-governmental organizations. But the beauty of the Pesticide Action Network list is that it is largely based on the FAO criteria and additional criteria that was applied by Pesticide Action Network. So it's like totally scientifically backed up. a list of highly hazardous pesticides. That should be explained actually to the governmental officials as well, as they may not be even familiar with the existence of such lists and their usefulness.
Excuse me, Olga, may I add about situation with GHS in Ukraine?
Sure.
According to the domestic situation in Ukraine, about the situation with GHS labeling, I would like to make one very important point, that Ukraine produces its own pesticides and agrochemicals, and companies who make these agrochemicals on the export, of course, according to the legislation of EU, they have to make this is GHS labeling. Thus, companies who make export, of course, they are presenting on the market also pesticides with GHS labeling, but not so much companies who produce all of this as agrochemicals and who exporting. Thus, situation not clear, but sometimes we can find this as components. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dennis. And also, it is great to know that in Tanzania, GHS is mandatory. It means that it is legally binding, right, for and applied for all pesticides. And from what I'm reading here, that in Tanzania, nevertheless, data on HHPs is not yet used in regulation enforcement. Yeah, so it's also important to know this. And if you need any assistance with this, so also please write about this and what can be done to improve enforcement either with of the GHS requirements and also of the national legislation. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it is said that in Zambia, the GHS labeling safety data sheets are required for important pesticides, and the companies rely on data from an importer, right? Yes, but if the importer also uses the GHS labeling and safety data sheets, that probably be sufficient, and Zambia does not need to, to go through laboratory tests by itself in case the importing company also applies the GHS approach and the labeling and safety data sheets. Mm-hmm. And in Rwanda, it is said that the country needs GHS labeling and safety data sheets, and Rwanda Environmental Management Authority for the Rotterdam Convention follows GHS labeling and data sheets, but for the does it mean that they follow the GHS labeling only for pesticides listed in the under the Rotterdam Convention, or for all imported pesticides? Probably only for those listed under the Rotterdam Convention. Mm-hmm. Yes, I agree with Frederick. Yes, having regional approach is also very important, and also the use of GHS. Yes, yeah, and also it is the use of GHS is extremely important for countries which do not produce pesticides by themselves, but totally rely on imports. Yeah, so. Mm-hmm.
Just a small note, if you allow, Olga, seeing that indeed there are very few examples of such needs assessment. I just noticed one for South Africa for malaria control. I think it would be also very beneficial to have experience exchange, sharing the results of such assessment and even methodologies. That would be very good for also on the regional basis. Thank you.
Thanks very much. And there's some good points coming up, both within the chat and on the poll. Olga, I invite you to take us through to question 3.
Oh, yes, sure. Thank you. Thank you very much, Andrea. So now a few words about the perspectives for the development of organic agriculture in Eastern Europe, Caucasus, and Central Asia region. So actually, the data obtained from the study that we presented today leads to recommendations to reduce and eventually eliminate HHPs in the Eastern European Caucasus and Central Asia. Use of chemical pesticides threatens ecosystems, and it is important to change the approach to agriculture by transforming it to ecosystem-based approach. And more information on safe substitution of HHPs, including the use of traditional knowledge in agriculture, is definitely needed. And also countries need good practice examples from around the world where governments not only ban certain HHPs, but substitute them with safer or non-chemical alternatives. A good example is the decision made by the parties to the Stockholm Convention on Persistent Organic Pollutants regarding endosulfan ban, which is one of the HHPs, and replacing it with safe alternatives and an ecosystem-based approach. As you probably know, the work on endosulfan ban was pioneered by the NGOs in India, which collected terrifying data on endosulfan health effects on children living in agricultural area with high endosulfan application. Another example is the initiatives taken in many countries to eliminate the use of glyphosate, which has a potential to cause adverse health effects. For example, in Germany, legislation was passed in February in 2021 to ban glyphosate by 2024. And German farmers will need to reduce the use of glyphosate until the ban takes effect in 2024. And certain retail stores in the country have already pulled glyphosate-based herbicides like Roundup from shelves. And there are many similar examples around the world. And fortunately, glyphosate is still very popular in Eastern Europe, Caucasus and Central Asia, and broadly available, including in ordinary stores where small farmers and private land owners by glyphosate-based pesticides for their land plots. So 2 years ago, the ECCA NGOs released a letter targeting their governments to speed up glyphosate restrictions and ban. And the letter, inter alia, includes an action plan for the complete phase out of glyphosate in ECCA countries, both at the household level and for industrial agriculture. The letter calls on ECCA governments to ban the free sale of Roundup herbicide and to use other measures to eradicate weeds based on less toxic products and agroecology and traditional knowledge, including mowing and plowing and crop rotation. And I want to highlight that if ECCA governments really want to protect people in this region, they should support organic farming. And I suggest to listen to 3 case studies to learn what some ECCA countries are doing at the national level to promote organic agriculture and what challenges they still face. So the first case study is from Armenia. Gohar, the floor is yours, please.
Thank you, Olga. I can say with satisfaction that overall organic farming is a priority for the Ministry of Agriculture. However, no significant progress has been made, and there are many reasons for that, such as lack of knowledge and interest from farmers, lack of consumer awareness, certain implementation difficulties, etc. For instance, recently we have done a study when we worked with the farmers working in greenhouses, and there is big use of glyphosate, chlorpyrifos, and the HHPs in general. And although they do know about alternatives, but they see some alternatives seem to be more expensive than the readily available HHPs. And these are the factors that can, influence the decision-making of the big producers, for instance, and also the small farmers. Who need more information, and they rely on their experience, and there is not much experience to share among farmers. They're quite conservative, and that's natural. There are some very good initiatives of various organizations that contain components and methods of agroecology, and we are very glad we are cooperating with the Agrarian University of Armenia, and it in fact offers graduate degrees in agroecology. They are very good young specialists now coming out. There is a local certification body that provides organic certificates recognized in the US, in Canada, in the European Union, in Swiss markets, as well as in the Caucasus locally. And we have since 2009 a law on organic agriculture. We think that everything is in place, just some impetus is needed to move forward. Thank you. Over to my colleagues.
Yeah, thank you very much, Gohar. And now I'd like to ask Denis Pavlovsky from the Chemical Safety Agency of Ukraine, please.
Thank you, Olga. So about situation with organic farming in Ukraine, it's not so bad. Thus, in 2017, the total area of agricultural land in Ukraine with organic status and the status of a transitional period was about 289,000 hectares. It's roughly 0.7% of the total area of agricultural land. Today, there are 529 organic market operators in the country. So it's a good indicator, and every year this indicator is rise. The foundations of the national policy on organic agriculture in Ukraine are based on the law of Ukraine, which called on basic principles and requirements for organic production, circulation, and labeling of organic products, which entered into force in 2019. Yes, of course, this is legislation defines the basic principles and requirements for organic agricultural production and labeling of organic products, but sometimes Ukraine have problems with analyzing all of these products on the national level. Thus, not so good business sometimes use this situation with laboratory analysis and trying to make labeling on his own products for better sellers. Several international projects have made a significant contribution to the development of agroecology in Ukraine. It's Swiss-Ukraine project development of the organic market in Ukraine, German-Ukrainian cooperation in organic farming, and the Swiss-Ukrainian program development of trade with a high added value in the organic and dairy sector of Ukraine. And also very important to make attention that organic status of Ukraine every day rise, but of course situation with these products need to control on the national level, and the government have to control chemicals in these products. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dennis. And yeah, so our last case study is from Kyrgyzstan that was prepared by the independent ecological expertise. So I will present it shortly. So Kyrgyzstan, what is good about Kyrgyzstan, that it actually put organic farming into the legislation. So in 2017, the concept for the development of organic agricultural production was approved, and in 2019, the law of the Kyrgyzstan Republic was also adopted, which is about the organic agricultural production in the country. And also in 2019, additional regulation on the Coordination Council for the Development of Organic Agricultural Production was adopted. So a lot has been done on the legislative level by the government. And as a result, 20 villages switched to organic agriculture in Kyrgyzstan. But nevertheless, there are obvious challenges. First of all, in the enforcement of the law on organic agricultural production. And also it is important to set up conditions for a transition period for farmers to switch to organic approach in the country. So domestic organic products are currently not competitive, and competition in the market requires either a different price range for organic products or a total ban on conventional agricultural production. Yes, which is not possible at the moment. So summing up, I want to say that lessons learned from other countries where HHPs were banned or severely restricted are very important for ECC region and could be collected by the national focal points to the BRS conventions and the strategic approach to international chemicals management, and then shared with the national officials to facilitate the switch from HHPs to safe alternatives and ecosystem-based approach. And for countries like the ECC, that will help to restructure their approach to conventional agricultural production and help save lives and protect the ecosystems. And now we're going to questions, right?
Thank you, Olga, and thank you also to the other presenters. So we now have our third question, and we have about just under 15 minutes. Are there legal mechanisms for the development of organic agriculture in your country or the country you work in? And how are they implemented? And what is hindering the development of organic agriculture in your country? As you've seen from the case studies, the importance of moving to organic agriculture. And we will have some poll questions as well.
Okay, so while we are waiting for some reflection to the questions, I must say that yesterday there was a community of practice on HHPs, if I'm not mistaken, as there was a very interesting presentation from FAO. And also before that, there was a webinar held by the World Future Council where the best policy from Sri Lanka was presented. Sri Lanka did a lot to ban HHPs and reduce suicide rates. And also there were presentations from other countries which switched to organic agriculture. So this is possible if there is really political will. So political will is the key actually in switching to organic agriculture. And what is happening in Eastern Europe, Caucasus and Central Asia, I consider it to be a good track to develop organic agriculture in these countries. But nevertheless, again, enforcement stands on the way, right? So enforcement lacks, I mean, it's really like an obstacle to to proper development of organic agriculture, though there are very good initiatives, and in some countries the legislation is present, but still the enforcement is an issue.
Dear colleagues, may I add about situation with certification in Ukraine?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, about situation with certification organic products in Ukraine, and I would like to say that many farmers who produced organic products, all of this is products selling abroad. Thus, certification process, all of this is farmers making abroad in EU countries, because 90% of organic products exporting in EU countries. Thus, we have certified products, but I'm not sure about the national organ who certified these as products on the territory of Ukraine. And also, as organic products have a high price, a higher price than other, thus it's not so easy to buy for Ukrainian citizens. Thus, sometimes certification making only abroad, only in EU, especially for EU market. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you very much, Dennis. And I also agree with the comment that promotion of pesticide use actually is a big obstacle to organic agricultural developments. And this promotion is made by the companies themselves, and yes, because they sell their products, and this is quite a significant obstacle. And also sometimes even experts who come to these countries, they have plans to promote certain pesticides, and this was the case, for example, in Tajikistan, where experts from different companies come to these countries and actually try to focus the farmers and the governments on the necessity to use pesticides. And they give arguments like, for example, in your climate, it is very important to use certain pesticides to sustain yield. So this kind of promotion really undermines the development of our organic agriculture and the use of safer alternatives to existing highly hazardous pesticides.
Olga, if you can allow just
Yeah, sure.
some thought about, I'm looking at the Mentimeter and the replies that we're getting there, interesting. And there is indeed a difference between the consumers who can afford or cannot afford. And this, I think, is a problem for everyone. But more and more, there is understanding of the advantages, and even the middle income and lower income people are trying to get, particularly for their children, for those who are in need of special care. And in Armenia, for instance, medicinal herbs and teas, herbal teas are very popular on the local market, and dried fruit, dried everything. We dry everything, in fact, that can grow. So all these things are very popular for export. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much, Goar. Yes, and what Frederick and Omar and many others write here, that governments actually are focusing on promotion of agrochemicals as the way to achieve food security. And as I mentioned just at the very beginning, that was the approach of the Soviet Union many years ago, which resulted in huge stockpiles, right, of obsolete pesticides. But that tendency is that countries increase the use of pesticides in agriculture. So the tendency is in the increase rather than in decrease. So much more work has to be done. And I actually totally support what Susan wrote in her comments, that it is very important to, I'm sorry, yes, I'm just looking at, it is very important to engage farmers for a risk-based pesticides tax, what was done in Germany. And also it is very important to inform farmers that using pesticides will result in deterioration of people's health and ecosystems. So when they are talking about the price of pesticides, they should keep it in mind. Yeah, so the cost is not only the monetary cost, but also the cost on the health system, the cost on people themselves who have to cope with the illnesses associated with pesticide exposure.
So as we slowly come to an end to this very important and vibrant discussion, I invite all the presenters to come on if you want to say anything in conclusion to what you're reading now or what you're seeing on the poll. You're welcome to make any final comments.
Yeah, so thank you very much. Thank you very much, Andrea. I just wanted to, if it is possible, just to put the last slide on the screen where we summarized that the common pesticide problems in ECC countries. I must say that the ECC countries are independent states, but nevertheless, there are many problems that are common to all countries in the region, and these problems are definitely related to pesticide management and the use of highly hazardous pesticides in the countries. And if you look at this list, I believe that many of these challenges are also faced by other countries in other regions and in Africa as well. We think that it is extremely important to require GHS labeling and safety data sheets to be mandatory in the countries when it comes to pesticides use and production and imports. And I was really glad to see that in some countries in Africa, GHS has already been made mandatory and applied to pesticide packaging. This is really an important step forward. And for the ECC region, as we said, only Kyrgyzstan made the GHS requirements legally binding, but it already brought some good results. Yes, so I think that this type of discussions that we had today is very important because it helps us to better understand what is going on in different regions, in the regions that we do not have like a direct connection with. But nevertheless, because of the global trade, and especially because of the global trade in pesticides, we all need to be connected and actually to build strong resilience, right, to illegal trade, to the trade of highly hazardous pesticides that undermine people's health and kills ecosystems, kills biodiversity, kills bees and other animals, and kills people. So the more discussions of this type we have, the better for us and the better for the environment. And probably Gar, you want to add to this?
Yeah, thank you very much. Indeed, I enjoyed greatly, especially the discussions and exposure to the experiences that people are facing in other regions. And we can see that we are not alone. And many other countries, small or big, are facing the same things. And also it was very good to hear that GHS is not such a difficult thing to achieve in our countries and in our region especially. GHS labeling, and we are really happy for Kyrgyzstan for this excellent experience. And it would be really very good to continue this kind of exchanges to see how the needs are assessed by the countries, how the alternatives are promoted, because just banning is not enough. You have to give something to the farmer and to prove to the farmer that that is possible. Yeah, I enjoyed greatly. Thank you very much to everyone.
And Dennis, probably you want to say something as well?
Yes, thank you very much. So I would like to add, and I would like to share our conclusion about this project, about situation with HHPs in Ukraine, and of course GHS labeling. So I would like to say that, for example, for Ukraine, which have a lot of obligations in the framework of agreement between EU-Ukraine agreement. Thus, in agenda we have obligations to make adoption of GHS labeling, REACH, CLP, and also focus a lot of make steps in the regulation of agrochemicals, including biocides. Thus, results of this is a huge work in the framework of EECC region, in the framework of IPEN project. It's a good instrument. It's a base for us. It's a base for NGO to start to continue work on the national level with government to demonstrate about a catastrophic situation with HHPs in Ukraine, and clearly not only on the words, really demonstrate a situation, deep analysis in this situation, and of course be together with government on the way of solve this problem. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks to all of you and to all the presenters again for taking us through the regional issues from the EECA. It was really very useful. And thank you, Olga, for organizing this. We'd like to also thank the participants for your time and for also sharing of your knowledge. Thank you to Tatum and Naomi, who were in the background, making sure that this discussion ran smoothly. You will have seen that an evaluation has been posted, so if you can please respond. We use the evaluation to continue to upgrade this discussion. If you have any particular topics that you'd like us to discuss next year, maybe you want us to repeat some, you're more than welcome to post it on the screen. Our next discussion will be on the 4th of November on child labor and pesticides, so please do note that. A summary digest of today's discussion and a lot of the resources will be sent out to you shortly. And if you're not registered for the Pesticide Discussion Forum, please do register so that you continue to get notifications of the next discussions. So thank you again to all our presenters and to you, the participants. I wish you a good day or a good evening and stay safe until next time. Bye from UCT.